What if I told you that one of the greatest film trilogies of all time has a dark side more twisted than Luca Brasi's fate? The Godfather Trilogy isn't just an epic tale of family and power, it's also a saga with secrets, controversies, and unintended consequences. From real mafia involvement on set to hidden messages in oranges, The Godfather changed cinema and the world in ways you wouldn't expect. It influenced how real mobsters behaved, sparked protests from Italian Americans, and even gave us a third installment some fans wish never happened. Intrigued? Stick around, because today we're uncovering everything bad and shadowy about the Godfather trilogy. And trust me, you'll want to stay till the end because we'll reveal some hidden messages in the movies that might just blow your mind. I'm director Ammar Hejazi. Before we dive into the dark side of the Godfather, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into cinema's secrets. If you love movies and the stories behind them, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Also, tell me in the comments which movie I should talk about in the next video. I'm always open to suggestions. Now leave the gun, take the cannoli, and let's get into it. You've probably heard the famous line, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse." Well, it turns out the real mafia made the filmmakers an offer they couldn't refuse. During production of The Godfather, 1972, actual mob bosses took a keen interest in how they were being portrayed. In fact, Joseph Colombo, head of a New York crime family, organized the Italian-American Civil Rights League to protest the film. They feared it would reinforce negative Italian stereotypes. The result? The producers struck a deal. No use of the words mafia or cosa nostra in the movie. That's right. If you rewatch the first film, you'll notice those terms are never spoken. Instead, they always say family business. This wasn't just a creative choice, it was a real mob influence on the script. Not only that, but real mobsters hung around on set as advisors. Some gangsters even befriended the actors, giving them tips on how a real Don might talk or carry himself. Lenny Montana, who played hitman Luca Brasi, was rumored to have actual mob connections, adding to the authenticity and nerves on set. The blending of fiction and reality gets even weirder. After the film came out, life imitated art. According to historians, The Godfather's popularity led real mafiosi to start copying the movie. They lifted lines of dialogue and mannerisms right from the film. For instance, the title Godfather itself wasn't commonly used in organized crime until after the movie made it famous. Some mob families started styling themselves after the Corleones, wearing sharper suits, conducting business with a bit more theatrical flair, even using tactics like the film Horsehead in the Bed, Anyone? As one sociologist noted, The Godfather gave criminals a protocol and a glamour that serves as both a corporate feel-good and a marketing tool. In other words, the movie inadvertently became a training manual for mobsters, teaching them how to act more like the movies. Talk about a dark legacy. Of course, this influence is a double-edged sword. On one hand, Coppola's film gave the mafia a more romanticized image, disciplined, honorable family men instead of just street thugs. On the other hand, it helped real criminals legitimize their behavior with cinematic style. Law enforcement officials even noted that mobsters started quoting lines from the film and embracing the Don Corleone mystique. Imagine FBI agents wiretapping gangsters and hearing them recite, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli." It actually happened. The dark irony here is that a film intended as entertainment ended up reinforcing the very underworld it portrayed. While The Godfather was earning Oscars and accolades, some people were raising alarms about its impact on society. Remember those Italian-American protests I mentioned? They weren't entirely off base. The trilogy did such a convincing job depicting the Corleone family that many viewers now forever link Italian culture with mob culture. In fact, a study decades later found that a whopping 74% of Americans believed Italian-Americans have ties to organized crime, even though only 0.0078% of Italian Americans were actually involved in the mob. Think about that. The stereotype became so pervasive that 3/4 of the public assumed any Italian family might have a capo in the kitchen. The Godfather undeniably changed the way generations think about the mafia. Before the film, gangsters on screen were often one-dimensional villains with cheesy accents. After The Godfather, audiences saw mobsters as complex, even relatable figures, fathers and husbands who just happened to also order hits between family dinners. This was revolutionary for cinema, but it also blurred the line between condemning crime and glorifying it. There's an argument about whether the trilogy romanticizes the mob. On the surface, the Corleones seem cool. They have a strict code of loyalty, offer favors on the day of their daughter's wedding, and insist it's nothing personal, just business. Audiences found themselves rooting for criminals, which was pretty much unheard of in earlier gangster films, by making the story about family, both the blood family and the crime family. Coppola got viewers emotionally invested in these violent men's lives. We forgive a lot of their bad behavior because, hey, they're doing it for family, right? As a result, The Godfather created a new template, the mobster anti-hero. This did improve Hollywood's portrayal of Italian Americans in the sense of giving them depth and dignity. It was finally a mob story told by an Italian-American director and author, showing Italians as fully realized people and not cartoon goons. Many Italian viewers, like author Tom Santopietro, felt pride and a connection to their immigrant heritage watching these films. But here's the dark side. For every Italian who saw The Godfather and felt seen, there were others who felt stigmatized. Stereotypes can be stubborn. Even as the movie humanized mobsters, it also cemented the idea that Italians equals mafia in pop culture. The very success of the trilogy made Don Corleone a global icon, and lines like, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse," became everyday jokes. As a result, people started casually assuming Italian Americans had mafioso uncles, much to the community's frustration. To this day, you can't discuss Italian American representation without debating The Godfather's impact. It's a cultural paradox. The film elevated the image of Italian characters in Hollywood, yet reinforced the mob stereotype so strongly that it overshadowed the reality of an entire culture. And it wasn't just Italians who took issue. There's a scene in the first film that is often overlooked, but is pretty troubling. During a meeting of the mob bosses, one Don suggests that if they sell drugs, they should keep it out of respectable neighborhoods and confined to the dark people, using a slur for African Americans, because they're animals anyway, so let them lose their souls. Yikes. That line is actually in the movie, showing that even the so-called honorable Corleone allies had blatantly racist attitudes. Vito Corleone doesn't object to that statement either. For all his old world values, the Don was apparently fine with ruining black communities with narcotics, as long as Italian American kids were spared. This is a dark slice of truth tucked into the script, a reminder that these mobsters we find ourselves sympathizing with are not good guys. They are criminals with ugly prejudices, willing to exploit others. It's a quick moment, but it speaks volumes. The Corleone family values didn't extend to everyone. That's something the film doesn't dwell on, but it's there as a moral gut punch if you catch it. Moreover, consider the portrayal of women in the trilogy. If you think about it, The Godfather's world is almost comically male-dominated. By design, women are mostly on the sidelines, cooking, having babies, or tragically caught in the crossfire. Poor Apollonia, Michael's first wife, literally gets blown up for being in the wrong car. Kay, played by Diane Keaton, is the outsider who marries Michael hoping he'll go straight, only to realize she's trapped in a criminal dynasty. One of the most powerful symbolic shots is at the very end of the first film. Michael has just become the new Don, and as Kay looks on, his men close the door in her face. Boom, cut to black. That door shutting is like the ultimate metaphor for how women are treated in this world, kept in the dark, shut out of the real decisions. In part 2, Michael even prevents Kay from leaving with their kids, literally blocking the doorway to keep control. Throughout the trilogy, doors are barriers separating the family business for men from the home for women. The hidden message is clear. Patriarchy rules in the Corleone family. This aspect is definitely part of the trilogy's dark side when viewed through a modern lens. The female characters have very little agency, and when they do assert themselves, like Kay getting an abortion in part 2 to stop the cycle of crime, the consequences are dire. It's heavy stuff, and Coppola uses those visual cues, doors closing, etc., to underscore it. Up to now, we've talked about the societal impact and context, but what about the trilogy itself? Let's face it, as brilliant as the films are, they are dark and full of disturbing moments. That's part of why we love them, but it's also what makes them deeply unsettling. Francis Ford Coppola didn't shy away from showing the ugliest side of mob life, and in some cases, he had to amp up the darkness to avoid glorification. For instance, in The Godfather Part II, 1974, Coppola deliberately portrayed Michael Corleone's deeds as even more heinous to drive home that he's not a hero. Michael orders the murder of an innocent prostitute to frame a US senator for murder, and later has his own brother Fredo killed for betrayal. Think about that. Our suave war hero turned gangster from the first movie crosses a line even his father Vito never would. Fratricide, killing your sibling, is as dark as it gets, and Coppola puts it right on screen to make us recoil. Above, the iconic kiss of death scene in The Godfather Part II. Michael Corleone, Al Pacino, embraces his brother Fredo, John Cazale, during a New Year's Eve celebration, only to reveal his betrayal with the chilling words, "I know it was you, Fredo." This moment foreshadows Fredo's fate and symbolizes Michael's complete descent into ruthlessness. It's family love twisted into a death sentence, capturing the trilogy's darkest theme. the destruction of one's own soul and family in the pursuit of power. Moments like the Fredo kiss are powerful because they show the moral decay at the heart of the saga. In the first film, Michael starts as a clean-cut outsider, a decorated Marine who says, "That's my family, not me." By the end of Part 2, he's a cold-blooded mafia boss who will eliminate anyone who threatens his power, even family. The transformation is Shakespearean in its tragedy, and it's meant to leave us uneasy. Coppola once said that Part 2 was an attempt to show the mob's darkness truthfully. Indeed, by the end of Part 2, Michael has won in the sense that he's eliminated his enemies and consolidated power, but he's utterly alone, sitting by himself at Lake Tahoe, soul hollowed out. This is the dark side of the American dream that The Godfather explores, the idea that unchecked ambition and the hunger for power will ultimately destroy you from the inside. Michael's story is basically How to Lose Your Soul 101. Hidden under all the cool quotes and snazzy suits is a cautionary tale. Crime might pay in money and power, but the cost is everything else: your family, your integrity, your happiness. The trilogy also doesn't pull punches with violence. I mean, the opening of The Godfather features a guy getting beaten to a pulp for harassing a local undertaker's daughter, Justice Corleone style, and it escalates from there. We witness a man get garroted from behind while groaning in agony. R.I.P. Luca Brasi, a brutal machine gun massacre at a toll booth, Sonny's death scene, which is still hard to watch. And of course the infamous severed horse head in the bed. Fun fact, that was a real horse's head obtained from a dog food factory. The actor's shock in that scene was genuine. It's an icon of cinema now, but it was also hugely controversial for its graphic nature. Animal rights groups were not pleased, understandably. The violence is stylized yet realistic enough to be disturbing, and it earned the film an early reputation for being blood-soaked. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker noted how the killings are connived at in darkness and then explode in bloody outbursts again and again. The film lulls you with quiet family drama, then bam, someone gets whacked. Some critics at the time actually thought The Godfather was too violent and nihilistic, highlighting the cruelty of these characters. Another often criticized aspect is how audiences sometimes misread the film's intent. Many viewers come away remembering the cool lines and the elegant power moves, and they forget the consequences shown. For example, Vito Corleone, Marlon Brando, is often thought of as an honorable, ethical mobster. He has that folksy wisdom, loves his family, doesn't want to deal drugs, etc. But hold on, we conveniently gloss over the fact that Vito is also a killer and a criminal mastermind. He even implicitly okays targeting minority neighborhoods for drug trade, the racist plan we mentioned, and orchestrates plenty of mayhem. He may draw a line at selling drugs initially, but murder and extortion are fine. This kind of selective memory by fans, idolizing Vito or Michael as cool gangsters, is part of the dark side of the trilogy's fandom. Some mobsters themselves saw Vito as a role model, cherry-picking his good traits, loyalty, generosity, and ignoring the bad. It's similar to how certain people idolize Tony Montana from Scarface without realizing the film is a critique of that lifestyle. The Godfather tries to show the ugliness along with the allure, but if you only watch it on a surface level, you might come away thinking the Corleones are admirable. That misunderstanding can be dangerous, and Coppola seemed aware of it, which is likely why he doubled down on showing Michael's monstrosity in Part 2. Finally, we can't talk about what was bad in the trilogy without addressing the elephant in the room. Part 3. Ah yes, The Godfather. Part 3, 1990. The chapter that many fans wish could sleep with the fishes. After two near-perfect films, Part 3 is widely considered a disappointment. Now, it's not totally without merit. It does bring some closure to Michael's story, but compared to the first two, it's rough. The production was plagued with issues. It was rushed to meet a release date, the original script idea changed, and notably, Winona Ryder dropped out of the key role of Mary Corleone, Michael's daughter, at the last minute due to exhaustion. In a pinch, Coppola cast his own daughter, Sofia Coppola, to play Mary, and here we have nepotism biting back in real life. Sofia, who was very young and inexperienced as an actress, delivered a performance that critics tore apart. They described her acting as flat, amateurish, and unconvincing. And unfortunately, it really does stick out in the movie. It didn't help that her character Mary is involved in a somewhat uncomfortable cousin romance subplot. Yes, Michael's daughter falls in love with her first cousin, Vincent Mancini, Sonny's illegitimate son. That made a lot of viewers go, "Ew, why?" Between the awkward romance, some convoluted plot about the Vatican Bank, and Sophia's stiff acting, Part 3 became an easy target for ridicule. Critics and fans alike slammed it for failing to recapture the magic. Even Al Pacino later joked that Part 3 was the tradition of the first two films, not the completion. In other words, it didn't live up to the legacy. Coppola himself has reflected on the backlash, saying it was painful to have his daughter face such public criticism. He felt responsible, and he also admitted that the story of Part 3 wasn't as clear or compelling as it could have been. In recent years, he even released a re-edited version titled The Godfather: Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone, which many find improved the film a bit. Diane Keaton, who played Kay, said it let her see the movie in a new light. But no matter what, Part 3 will always carry the stigma of being the weak link in the trilogy. If Parts 1 and 2 are near perfect 10s, Part 3 is like a 6 at best. Some would say that itself is the dark side of The Godfather, that the epic story didn't quite stick the landing. However, in a way, the messy nature of Part 3, with its themes of regret, redemption, and the inescapability of sin, adds an extra layer of melancholy to the saga. Michael ends up a haunted old man, which is probably what he deserved, but the execution, no pun intended, left a lot to be desired for audiences. As promised, let's talk about some hidden messages and subtle details in the Godfather trilogy. These are the things that make rewatching the films so rewarding, and they underscore the trilogy's dark themes in quiet ways. One of the most famous bits of symbolism in The Godfather is oranges. Yes, the fruit. If you've never noticed, keep an eye out for oranges next time you watch. An orange on screen usually means trouble is coming, often death. It's like a cinematic omen. For example, Vito Corleone buys some oranges from a street vendor moments before he gets gunned down in the street. He survives that time, but still. During the infamous horsehead scene, there are oranges on the table at the dinner with the film producer earlier. Soon after, the poor guy finds his prized stallion's head in bed. When Vito finally dies for real, he's literally holding an orange slice in his mouth, playfully teasing his grandson in the tomato garden. And in Part 3, Michael dies slumped in a chair, dropping an orange to the ground. Coincidence? Most think not. Coppola never explicitly said oranges equals death, but it's a pattern fans and film scholars have picked up on. The bright, sweet fruit stands out against the dark scheme of the movies, perhaps symbolizing the rot and decay lurking beneath the Corleone's world. It's a neat Easter egg, a little visual warning each time fate is about to catch up with someone. Another subtle motif is the use of doors and windows. We touched on doors earlier, how they often show the separation between the criminal world and the family home. That final door closing on Kay at the end of Part 1 is the most famous instance, basically a mic drop moment of symbolism. It tells us Michael has fully embraced the role of Godfather, and Kay, representing innocence and the outside normal world, is shut out forever. Windows, on the other hand, often hint at vulnerability or a boundary between safety and danger. There's a scene in Part 2 where Michael and Kay's bedroom window curtains flutter in the night breeze, a peaceful image, seconds before hitmen spray the bedroom with bullets in an assassination attempt. The fluttering curtain was a subtle cue that the outside world, chaos, was about to invade their private home, supposed order. Similarly, young Vito as a child sits on an Ellis Island detention cot, gazing out a small window at the Statue of Liberty. That window represents the freedom and opportunity of America that he wants but can't reach yet. And later, an older Michael stands behind a glass window watching as his brother Fredo is murdered out on the lake. In that case, the thin glass is an insufficient wall. It can't protect Michael from the ugly reality of what he's done, or from his guilt. These visual metaphors add a poetic layer to the story. They're not spelled out, but they deepen the impact of the saga's themes: the corruption of the American dream, the loss of family, and the isolation of power. Speaking of the American dream, one hidden message is how the Godfather trilogy charts the journey from immigrant hope to American nightmare. The very first words of the first film are famously, "I believe in America." They're spoken by an undertaker seeking Don Corleone's help, but thematically it kicks off a story about America's underbelly. In Part 2, the flashbacks of young Vito, Robert De Niro, show a classic rags-to-riches tale. A poor Sicilian immigrant builds a prosperous life in the New World, but through crime. It's like saying, the only way for someone like Vito to achieve the American dream was by operating in the shadows. By contrast, his son Michael has everything: education, honor, a chance to go legit, and yet he chooses the dark path and loses everything that truly matters: love, family, peace of mind. So together, Vito and Michael's stories send a message. Be careful what you sacrifice in pursuit of success, because you might get the power you want but end up damned or alone. Michael is the dark mirror of Vito. He takes the family legacy and twists it into something colder and more ruthless. As one analysis put it, Michael becomes the dark embodiment of American self-determination, a man who wants to do whatever he wishes without consequence. And in doing so, he turns the American dream into a personal hell. Heavy stuff, hidden under all the mob intrigue. If you stay till the very end of Part 2, there's an understated scene, a flashback, where the Corleone family is together at a table and Michael announces he enlisted in the Marine Corps. It's the only time we see the family before the events of the trilogy, and it highlights how Michael was once the odd one out, a good man among criminals. That contrast drives home the tragic message: even the best of us can fall given the wrong circumstances and choices. Lastly, we have to mention the brilliant baptism scene from the climax of the first film, because it's basically film symbolism 101. As Michael stands as godfather to his infant nephew at a church, renouncing Satan and all his works at the altar, we see his hitmen carrying out the brutal murders of the rival mob bosses. The cross-cutting between the sacred, a holy baptism, and the profane, murders, is powerful visual irony. Michael is literally becoming a godfather in both senses at the same time, a spiritual protector to a child and a crime lord solidifying power and blood. The hidden message: hypocrisy and duality. Michael wants to appear as an upright, pious family man, but his actions are those of a remorseless killer. He's living a double life, and in that moment the film shows both faces starkly. It's saying something about corruption. Evil often hides behind a respectable front. This theme echoes through to Part 3, where Michael is trying to buy redemption, donating to charity, doing business with the Vatican, yet crimes from his past literally come back to haunt him. The Godfather is full of these moral messages if you look for them. It's not just crime is bad, but pride, greed, and loyalty can all be destructive when twisted. Family is a blessing and a curse in this story. It bonds people together, but it also becomes the excuse for unspeakable acts. So, those are some of the hidden layers and dark underbelly of the Godfather trilogy. It's a masterpiece of cinema, yes, but it's also much more than a glamorized gangster tale. It's a tragedy about the corruption of ideals and the cost of violence. The trilogy affected audiences worldwide, inspiring filmmakers, spawning countless imitations, and even altering how real criminals see themselves. But it came with baggage, controversies, misinterpretations, and a cultural impact that's not entirely positive. And yet, here we are, still talking about it, still fascinated. Perhaps that's the ultimate legacy of The Godfather. It made us an offer we couldn't refuse, a brilliant story that entertains us, even as it warns us of its own darkness. If you made it this far, congratulations. You now know the dark side of The Godfather trilogy. I hope next time you watch these films, you'll notice those subtle cues, spot the oranges, and remember that behind the epic saga of the Corleones lies a cautionary tale. Did any of these facts or hidden messages surprise you? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think The Godfather glorifies the mob too much, or does it properly show they're the bad guys? If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more insights into your favorite movies, and tell me which movie or trilogy I should uncover next. Your suggestions might make it into the next video. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm director Ammar Hejazi signing off. I'll leave the gun, take the cannoli, and see you in the next episode.